A naturalistic theory of Islam's origins. This is Son of Freedom. Purpose of the study: to enumerate a partial list of emerging evidences from the application of historical critical methods which invalidate the history of early Islam typically taught to Muslims. This line of evidence, if confirmed, invalidates a supernatural origin of Islam. What are historical critical methods? Historical critical methods do not assume revelation or the supernatural. They try to account for all the data naturalistically. We will not assume that al-Tabari and Ibn Ishaq are accurate accounts of what happened in early Islam. Instead, we will start from non-textual data and see if such non-textual data confirms or invalidates the traditional account of Islam coming from these texts. Data points. The earliest Qibla, that is direction of prayer, points toward Petra, not Mecca. See this reference? Gibson surveyed many mosques and found that from 622 to 725, all the mosques pointed toward Petra, not Mecca. Petra is south of the Dead Sea. From 725 to 822, the mosques were mixed. Then beginning in 822 CE, all the mosques had their Qiblas pointing toward Mecca. See this reference. But note that in his Appendix A, page 401, he says that after Ibn Tulan Mosque, dated 870 CE in Egypt, no more mosques were pointed in a direction other than Mecca. The topography surrounding Mecca fits Petra better. The evidence for this is given in this reference. Gibson also cites Patricia Crone, Meccan Trade, and the Rise of Islam, which supports the thesis that the descriptions of Mecca in Islamic literature describing Mecca do not fit the actual topography of Mecca. Gibson notes that the Quraysh tribe always attacked Medina from the north. See this reference? This is consistent with Muhammad being from the north or from Petra. The plant life and crops described in the Quran do not fit with Mecca. Mecca does not seem to exist in Muhammad's time. No other written records from outside the Hijaz, which are contemporary to Muhammad's time, make reference to a town of Mecca. It is as if it had not been settled yet. Coins minted referring to a Muhammad, lowercase m, do not show up until almost 700 CE, but with a cross and other Christian symbolism. Volker Pop, see this reference? Many of these coins show a Muhammad with Christian symbology, suggesting the interpretation that Muhammad, which means praised one, initially referred to Jesus. The earliest written biography of Muhammad appears 200 years after the Hijra. The Hijra is 622 CE. Ibn Ishaq is dated 761, but we don't actually have Ibn Ishaq. The Ibn Ishaq we do have is an edition edited by Ibn Hisham, dated 833 CE. So the earliest written biography of Muhammad that we have is 200 years after his death, which suggests that there was a lot of time for the accretion of legend surrounding Muhammad. Muhammad, in its earliest usage on coins, is an appellation, not a proper name. See this reference? We know this because the coins bearing Muhammad also show a cross and other symbology. This means that Muhammad, meaning praised one, was initially an appellation or an epithet, and it was referring to Jesus. The earliest Quranic manuscripts contain corrections. See this reference. Brubaker, this is Daniel Allen Brubaker. He has shown now up to this time in the last 5 or 8 years, he has shown thousands of places in the earliest Quranic manuscripts that there have been corrections to the manuscripts. And so there's no such thing as an eternal Quran. If there is an eternal Quran, we certainly don't have it. And if we don't have it, why couldn't Allah have given us the perfect copy of the eternal Quran? What's wrong? Allah's falling down on the job. The earliest Quranic manuscripts contain words of Syro-Aramaic origin. This work is primarily done by Christoph Luxemburg. Here are two references. This suggests that the Islamic traditions were passed around orally for a long time in Syro-Aramaic. When they were finally written down in Arabic, some of the Syro-Aramaic words didn't have an equivalent in Arabic, so they were transliterated into Arabic and added to the Quran, where Luxembourg detected them. This suggests that Islam did not originate from or in the Arabian Peninsula, but to the north, probably in the area of Mesopotamia. The Quran also contains words of Jewish origin. This is shown by Abraham Geiger in this reference. So this means that some of the ideas and traditions in the Quran are known to be borrowings from Jewish sources. This is consistent with the traditions in Islam that say that his tribe, the Quraysh, referred to Muhammad as an ear. The Quran contains ideas of Persian origin. For example, the idea of the Oris comes from Persia. Okay, here are some dates for the Hadith collection and the Sirah, and you'll notice that they are all 200 years after Muhammad's life. So there's a lot of opportunity for the accretion of tradition or legend. And you'll notice that, and also it's known that the editors of the Hadiths were said to have thrown away 98% of all the Hadiths that ever existed, which ran into the hundreds of thousands. And what we have now are collections of typically 6, 7, 8,000 in each of the Hadith collections. And you can see 7 of the Hadith collections on the screen with their dates. Other dates for reference: 711, Spain conquered from across the Strait of Gibraltar. 725, Muslims enter France. 730, John of Damascus mentions the Quranic surahs, which had the title woman, cow, table, and camel. They are mentioned as separate writings and not yet part of a Quran. In 732, we have the Battle of Tours, which halts the advance of Islam into France, meaning that Spain, nearly all of Spain, had already been overrun. Some of the ideas and practices of Islam are holdovers from animism. See this reference. For example, the idea of the circumambulation during Hajj is a holdover from paganism. You can read the screen for more detail. Okay, there is no evidence in the Old Testament which places Abraham in Mecca. Abraham is not found visiting Mecca anywhere in the Old Testament. There is no Kaaba mentioned in the Old Testament. If, as Islamic tradition tells us, Abraham himself laid the foundations of the Kaaba, see this reference, and the Old Testament prophets are Muslim prophets, as Islam claims, and all Muslims point toward the Kaaba when they pray, then we should expect that such an event, such an important event, would be recorded in Genesis, but it is not. This silence, I think, suggests that it is a mere legend. There is no evidence that a city called Mecca existed in the 7th century. Muhammad is only mentioned 3 times in the original text of the Quran, here at these references, and the Quran has surprisingly few mentions of geography. Why is that? Well, my theory is that it's because the Quran was transposed or transported from the area of Mesopotamia, or it was in development in Mesopotamia, but when it settled in finally in Mecca, then the geographical references were edited out. Quran places Muhammad at the Al-Aqsa Mosque when it would have still been a temple to Jupiter. Now, if Muhammad is visiting the Al-Aqsa Mosque, we've got a problem here, because the Al-Aqsa Mosque wasn't built till 705, so either the Quran is mistaken to say that he visited the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which didn't exist yet, or the Quran is having Muhammad visit the temple Aelia, which is the temple to Jupiter, while Muhammad is supposedly championing and promoting Tawheed. Well, why would Muhammad visit a temple to Jupiter if he was promoting Tawheed? That doesn't seem to sync. Okay, what does this evidence mean for al-Tabari? Either the events described by al-Tabari did not take place in Mecca, or they did not take place at all. What does this evidence mean for Ibn Ishaq? The same thing, ditto. The Quran thinks that Ur means fire, not a city. Ur is a city in Mesopotamia. Well, what happened was that a Jewish scribe picked up Ur and mistranslated it as fire and incorporated it into Jewish apocryphal literature. And then when the editors of the Quran borrowed it from Jewish apocryphal literature, they imported it into the Quran as a fire. So the Quran has Abraham falling into the fire and not getting hurt. And the Quran confuses Mary and Miriam at Quran 19:28. The Quran thinks that Mary, the mother of Jesus, is also Miriam, the sister of Aaron. So this is wrong. This is a mistake in the Quran. The Quran can't even get the Trinity right. The Quran thinks that the Trinity is the Father, Son, and Mary, which is not correct. Here's the reference. Were the Torah and the Injil altered? The Quran says that none can change Allah's words, but Muslim apologists say that the Torah and the four evangelists represent an alteration of the Torah and Injil, which means that Allah's words have been changed. Which is it? If Allah's words have been changed, then the places where the Quran tell the Muslim to corroborate the Quran with the Torah and the Injil are wrong. In other words, the Quran says, if you think that this Quran is not from Allah, then go and check in the Torah and the Injil. Well, then it's assuming that the Torah and the Injil are correct. If Allah's words have not been changed, then those places where the Torah and the Gospel contradict the Quran, namely the crucifixion of Jesus, for example, show the Quran to be wrong. This is called a dilemma. The Quran cannot be correct. O Muslim, you should leave Islam. The science and cosmology of the Quran reflect a medieval worldview. The Quran teaches that the earth is flat. At this reference, the text says carpet. Later editors try to cover this up by translating wide expanse. The Quran teaches that there are 7 earths at this reference. The Quran teaches that the sun sets in a mighty spring. See this reference. The Quran teaches that man is made of a blood clot. See this reference. This is an important topic because Muslim apologists try to say that much of modern science is anticipated by the Quran. Much is thought to be source of all knowledge, which is thought to be source of all knowledge. This is the thrust of the Islamization of knowledge movement. It is rather tedious but important to show that the Quran does not contain anything that could be called science. It just reflects a backward phenomenology of the period. The Quran has Abraham directing the Muslims to worship an idol, namely the Kaaba. In Quran 21.57, Abraham breaks all the idols except one, namely the Kaaba. The Kaaba itself is explicitly called an idol. Then in 21:58, the Quran has Abraham directing the Muslim to pray to the last remaining idol, namely the Kaaba. So the Quran has Abraham telling Muslims to worship an idol. The Quran has the Muslim worshiping at least 10 idols. Muhammad, the Quran, the Kaaba, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. If Muhammad is the champion of Tawheed, but the Quran orders the Muslim to worship idols, then the Quran is a contradiction and is clearly a human contrivance. Inscriptions inside the Dome of the Rock suggest that it was a repurposed church. What hypothesis do these anomalies suggest? Provisional hypothesis is that Islam is not a supernatural religion. It is a late heresy arising out of the Monophysite reaction to the Council of Chalcedon, 451 CE. Originally, the praised one referred to Jesus, whose humanity faded in the Monophysite heresy, but eventually praised one became an appellation, which was hijacked by the Arabs and applied to their warlord, who may or may not have been a historical person. Thus, Muhammad, the prophet of the Arabs, hijacks the appellation originally intended for Jesus, and the religion hardens into a monotheism, namely Tawheed. The Old Testament prophets are redesignated as Muslim prophets. Jesus is demoted to a Muslim prophet. The Dome of the Rock is repurposed as a shrine to an alleged night journey that was nothing more than a legend about a dream that Muhammad had. What if this theory is correct? Then Islam just represents a late Christian heresy which emphasized a monophysite theology This monophysite theology was attached to a movement which was propelled by its doctrine of war. The Muhammad, that is the praised one, was just a cipher for the values and by now fading early history of the movement, which served to give it concreteness. Islam is just an imperialistic movement, an Arab empire initially seeking to take land, booty, and tax through the jizya and kharaj. Warriors were rewarded with war booty and the promise of 72 perpetual virgins in paradise if killed in battle. Where does our data place the origin of Islam? If indeed the Quranic traditions were circulated orally in Syro-Aramaic, then it is likely that Islam arose where Syriac was spoken, namely around Mesopotamia. This would account for traditions and ideas from Persia and India becoming a part of Islam. The lack of geographic information in the Quran can be explained by hypothesizing that any old geographic information was edited out when Islam was migrating to Arabia. If the Islamic traditions originated in Syro-Aramaic, then why did Islam become a religion for the Arabs? The strong orientation of Islam to Tawhid originated because of the strong monophysite theology in the east around Mesopotamia. However, it was the Arabs who developed a strong doctrine of war, and they adopted the monophysite theology of the Christians and translated Proto-Islamic traditions into Arabic. This explains why Luxembourg finds Syro-Aramaic idioms in the Quran. The word Muhammad was originally a title for Christ, but when the Arabs became early on victorious in war, they appropriated the title as a name of an early warlord for their movement. The more anomalous data we find, the more we must conclude that al-Tabari and Ibn Ishaq are legends, or at least that the locations are altered to place the events in the Hajjaj. Okay, thank you for listening. This is Son of Freedom.